Hi folks, welcome back to Three Barrow Farm and quite a breezy morning here in central Victoria. I'm hoping that the sound will be just fine and we can get a little video recorded here. So today in my very green garden, I wanted to chat to you about what you can plant in cool regions of Australia in January. So when I say plant, I'm talking about sowing from seed. So there are some things that you can plant as fully grown plants, and it is easier to do that at this time of the year, particularly the summer vegetables. But there are things that you can sow from seed as long as you're keeping the water up to them. They're nice and moist and they don't dry out. They should germinate for you. So if you're sowing directly into the garden, I recommend sowing somewhere where they're a bit sheltered. So say on the other side of these sunflowers here, I could sow a row of turnips and they would be sheltered from the west sun and some of the north sun during the day. And this just means that the soil won't dry out as fast and you can keep the water up to them. So here are some seeds that are recommended that you can sow at this time of the year. I don't sow all of them. I definitely don't do a lot of late planting, and I will explain this later. But if you are in Melbourne, which is more of a cool temperate zone, or if you're in a more sheltered area than I am, so I'm out in a paddock on a farm on 42 acres with lots of room around me, so there's not a lot of shelter happening here. I don't have fences. I have to rely on growing my own shelter in my garden. And I'll also talk about days of growth in a little bit, because this is what I'm looking at. It's the amount of days I have left till my first frost. So things you can plant at the moment are beans, beetroot, Brussels sprouts and broccoli. You can plant cabbage and carrots, chives, and you can also plant corn. So as I said, look at those days. I'm just listing all of the things at the moment, but I will get into detail in a moment. You can also plant kale and leek. So all of the brassica vegetables we can start planting now. They're pretty much vegetables that you can plant all year round. You just have to be careful. They're not so fantastic through summer. So you might want to wait till February or March to plant your brassicas. Lettuces and radishes you can plant at the moment too. Again, they are something that you can plant pretty much all year round, as long as you're keeping the water to them, because in summertime they tend to want to just sprout up and make seed, and this is their natural instinct telling them that, oh, I'm not getting enough water, I'm not going to survive, so quickly I need to make seed so that I can make more of myself, I can duplicate myself. So as long as you're keeping up the water, they won't go into stress and then think, oh, nope, I need to make seed. You can plant silver beet and chard as well. You've been digging in my garden. See, hear that snorting? She's been digging in my garden. This is, the biggest pest that I have. You're the biggest pest. Where have you been digging? Have you been digging up my potatoes for me? Hey? So where was I before I was interrupted by dogs digging in my vegetable garden? So yes, spring onions, you just got to be careful. Some of the packets say only to plant them in spring and autumn, I believe, but not in summer. And lastly, swede and turnips. I have planted some turnips just yesterday and I'm trying to keep the water up to them. I haven't done what I generally do. I think those dogs are going back to that digging spot. Okay, they must be on some particular scent because they are digging into some of my potatoes. The only way I can get them to stop digging is to hold them. The Jack Russells were bred to hunt mice and rats, and my dogs are constantly on the lookout for them. Okay, so these are some things that we can plant in the cool regions of Australia. But I wanted to show you a few things. So I'm interested to try corn again. I did plant corn late last year, so I got a later harvest. It wasn't fantastic, but it was something. And I had to look at the weeks until harvest on my seed packets. Some of my corns take much longer, but I found these two, the Honey and Cream and the Breakthrough, they are both 11 weeks till harvest. So I can definitely plant these in my garden and expect to have a harvest from these. So I'm about 14 or 16 weeks away from my first frost. So it's the 2nd of January and I have to take note of that. So if I plant these corns now, I will expect to harvest in March. But if I was to plant them a bit later, I would be risking it because our first frost can occur in April. Now, another thing that I wanted to experiment with, and we shall see, because I did plant some late sunflower seeds in my garden, and when I'm saying late, 2 weeks ago, and they didn't germinate. So either the manure was too thickly spread on top of them, or the bugs got to them, or I just didn't have any success there because the soil wasn't moist enough. But these sunflowers are supposed to flower within 8 weeks. So I'm going to give these ones a go and have another go at planting them. I'm definitely going to be planting all of the root vegetables that I have available here. I have lots of carrots to plant, and I have some spring onions. So the only spring onions in my seed collection were the spring onion red and the spring onion evergreen from Diggers that I can plant now. These are all season spring onions, so they are all good to go in the garden right now. I'm also going to be planting beetroot. I need lots of beetroot in my garden so that I have lots of pickled beetroot for the off seasons. We definitely go through a lot, and I have friends asking for some as well. So I will be making lots of pickled beetroot with these beetroots, hopefully. Okay, one thing that I didn't mention and that I'm going to experiment with this time around are zucchinis. So I have in my hand here, I have long Florence zucchini and I have Costata romanesca zucchini in this hand. Now, this long Florence is going to be ready in 14 weeks to harvest. Now that is too long away for me. I would be lucky to get maybe 1 or 2 zucchinis off this plant. So I'm not going to be planting the long Florence. But this one here, this Costata romanesca, is good to plant now because it will be ready to harvest in 9 weeks. So I'm going to have a go at planting some of these and just experimenting to see what happens. And lastly, I have some basil seeds here, and these ones are supposed to be ready in 80 days. So that's about 11 and a half weeks. So I think I could get some of these in the ground now, and I might be able to get even more basil out of my harvest this season. So they are all the vegetables that you can plant in cool temperate zone in Australia. I hope that really helps you in deciding what you're going to do this month and whether you're going to plant or not. Just keep up the water to those seeds. And if you're just not sure about planting seed at this time, then go ahead and just buy some seedlings and whack a few in. Of course, I wouldn't recommend doing that with the carrots because they like to be direct sown. But if you get a bit of sugar cane mulch and put it over the carrot seed that you sow into your garden, you should be able to keep the moisture in just fine. I've got some carrot seed beside me that I planted not too long ago, maybe about a month ago, and it's doing really well despite the fact that we haven't had much rainfall at all. and so I've just been hand watering it. It has drippers on one side of the bed but not on the other, and they're doing quite well even though they don't have the drippers on one or two of the lines that I've sown into the ground. And of course there are plenty of other things to do in the garden. We've got weeding and mulching and harvesting as well. So enjoy your summer gardens, my friends, and I will see you again soon for another video. Take care, and I hope your garden is thriving. See you next time.